I hope that council will indulge that our discussion will be much more wholesome than what's taken place so far. This is a $60 million expenditure, at least, minimum $60 million. That is equivalent to taking the excellent work that we have done for many, many years in building our reserves and spending the equivalent of all of it. I have, from the offset, been a strong advocate for a new double pad arena and library. I continue to be. But there's a lot of things that weren't discussed today that need some wholesome discussion. Some of the things that weren't mentioned, our number one priority is the town's role in the redevelopment of our beachfront. We are still a community that's 95% reliant on residential property tax. The beachfront can have a significant impact on how we redevelop that, is what it does, not just as a catalyst for future development for commercial and retail, but in itself will be a strong increase in commercial retail. Involved in that, yes, we will get nice development charges, but we are at the cusp of having proposals brought into us to have a better understanding of how that will be laid out and what the role the municipality will play. Our CAO at a recent meeting to me, after talking to Tatham, I said, you know, there's absolutely going to be a parking structure, and he used the word plurally, that it may be structures. And so a couple of parking structures, I think the last estimate by this council was roughly $14 million apiece. That's $28 million. There's no mention of that here anywhere. That's on top of raising Beach Drive and a lot of other work. A year from now, we'll have a lot better understanding how our number one priority will affect our budgets. I think that's extremely important. There was no mention about the almost $1 million that the YMCA has requested in support over the next 2 years, which is significant. Remember, $245,000 is 1% on our taxes.
Okay,
So,
and I believe that the treasurer has mentioned that those types of things are coming in the next round for discussion.
No, but we're voting on something today, on an option without this information, and these things have implication.
Well, we do have the information, though. There's a whole report on it for the arena and library, the pros, the cons, the risks, and the staff recommendation for that. When we discuss the YMCA situation or other situations, we will get their input then.
Madam Mayor, I've asked for your indulgence. This is a $60 million decision for our community, and there's a lot of things that I think require further discussion.
Just hang on for 1 second, please, Councillor. I just want the public to know, though, that you're throwing things out here that I'm not prepared to debate today because we weren't getting into them, but things like the beachfront development and the need for parking structures and things like that. That's part of that development down there. So I don't want people to think that there's, you know, $28 million that we still have to factor for. So we need to be careful what we're throwing out there, that there's not a misunderstanding.
I'm fine with that, but this is information that may be very pertinent and impact the decision that we're voting on today on an option to move forward on a $60 million project.
Yeah, carry on with your comments, then. Go ahead.
Okay. I also want to point out, and this is a quote as you, as a new mayor, in January of 2019, when the government put the community hub review process under review, you had indicated that for us to move forward without other levels of government support would be financially irresponsible. That was during a time frame of low interest rates, I might add. It continues to be. Not quite sure what changed, but there's been no talk about strengthening our application in the next round of grants. We went from a location on Main and Beck that had a walkable synergy with a dependable venue to our tourist industry. That included a double pad arena, a library, a cultural center, a town square, and the provision for a high school, which was very, very in line with community hub guidelines and may have got us $39 million in grants. No one knows. We moved the location. It's no longer walkable from the beachfront, really. And we've gotten zero. We requested 39 million. I'd like to know what municipalities our size have taken on a $60 million project without any government funding. I think we should go back. Like, if we would have got 25 million in government funding, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But 39 million requested, we got zero, and we're saying, okay, let's just do it all on our own. And any way you slice it, whether you pay it over 30 years or not, every 245,000 as of today is a 1% increase equivalent to our taxpayer, either through development charges, a future taxpayer, or an existing taxpayer. It will, we've put in, even in our budget process, we say we may have to defer other projects, we may have to make other projects totally grant dependable. And the impact of COVID, we haven't even talked about the billions of dollars that have been spent by provincial and federal governments. Our next widening of River Road West may not allow us any government funding. We don't know that today. And it's not talked about. The next widening, I believe, is estimated at $12.3 million. Our expectation is to get $2 or $3 million in funding, and we likely won't get any. So all of these things haven't been talked about. I believe that the appropriate thing to do, and another thing is public engagement, because the public also, previous council, this council until recently, and the public all expected that provincial and federal governments would participate in this project. If you went to our public right now and told them that we're taking the $60 million on municipally, they would be upset. And I could tell you, I've talked to a couple hundred. And I'm not telling people they're going to get a $1,500 tax increase. What I'm saying is the equivalent of the expenditure, every 245,000 is 1%. Whether you spread it over 30 years or you spread it over 10 years, we have to pay the money back with interest. And I don't believe we've taken enough things into consideration. And primarily, the first thing would be to really strengthen our application. And we have some great resources. I talked to Ken Voss, the owner of Canadian Tire. He served on the committee for Bradford's Community Hub. They got substantial government funding. The library in Collingwood got substantial government funding. And here we are willing to take it on all ourselves, all of our taxpayer. And I believe that's totally wrong. We paid in to those coppers at the provincial and federal level, and they used it to update facilities in other communities. We're entitled to their participation, and I think it's worth at least one more attempt to strengthen our application. They used a third-party expert in the case of Bradford, and were very successful. So I have so many points here that I could discuss and questions. You know, our own fund is decreasing. Will the gas tax change? You know, we mentioned that the casino revenues haven't materialized. That was discussed at one point as being a benefit in taking on the project. I just believe to move forward with the construction period before we have a lot more thorough dialogue, especially related to the beachfront, and especially in trying to get provincial and federal funding, is financially irresponsible and unacceptable to me. Thank you.
Okay, and again, for those watching, I think a lot's been thrown out there today, and I know that we will be reviewing a lot more things, but as far as the arena and library goes, for factual numbers and the pros and cons, I encourage people to read this report. We have two motions here, and I'd look for a mover and seconder for the first one. Councillor Watson and Councillor Kinney, that Committee of the Whole, as Budget Committee, recommend to Council that it receive the Treasurer's report on the first draft of the 2021 operating and capital budget for information and discussion. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And a mover and seconder for the second one, Councillor Foster, Deputy Mayor Bray. The Committee of the Whole as Budget Committee recommend to Council that it receive the Treasurer's report on the financial plan for the new arena and library facility, and further that as per the justifications outlined in the attached report titled Financial Plan for the new arena and library build, that the project continue with the current time schedule, which is building a new twin pad arena and library throughout 2021 to 2023. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried by a vote of 5-1 with Councillor Belanger in opposition. And with that, thank you again, Jocelyn, to you and your team, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.